Hello, I would like to introduce you today to Kristin Keen. Kristin lived for 5 years in Kolkata, India, where she co-founded Sari Bari, a thriving business that gives survivors of human trafficking a way out of exploitation through employment. So, welcome, Kristin Keen.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Kristin, you said you're a driven and passionate woman entrepreneur who uses business to change the world. Where did that passion find its start?
Um, it started way back. So the reason why I do this work is for women to know their worth and their value. And you can always tell what a founder struggles with because that's usually what they dedicate their life to. So like I had a time in my life where that was a huge issue, and I had some not good experiences around the issue of sex, and I was like, I never want another woman to feel this way. Um, so I ended up dedicating my life to give women an opportunity to feel their worth and their value. I never thought this is what I would be doing. I really honestly, when I was 23, I was like, I just want to get married and have children and be a stay-at-home mom. I don't want to live anywhere else. I'm going to stay at home. And now I'm 43. I have no children. I've never gotten married. I lived in 3 different countries and I've started 2 businesses. So this would have been never what I thought I ended up doing, but I love it.
Those are your babies, those
Those are my
companies.
babies.
So who most impacted who you are today?
I think there's been a series of people who have impacted my path and my journey. One of my most influential people in my life is my youth director. He was my youth director growing up, and then I ended up interning with him for 2 summers. And he just spoke a lot of life into me and like valued what I brought to the table, and also showed me grace for what I wasn't good at. So I learned I'm not organized or administrative, and he is like, that's okay. I can help you with that. And that's a lesson I've taken with me through my life. My coworkers in India, Sarah Lance and Beth Waterman, they're still 2 of my best friends. That at one point it was just the 3 of us living there in Calcutta, India together, walking with these women to freedom. And they have had a huge influence on my life. And then the women I've gotten to work with. I mean, I've seen women overcome situations that I don't think I could make it through. And watching their resiliency, their grace that they walk through it with, and how they do the hard work of healing. So I've had a lot of amazing influences along my journey.
Now, Sari Bari and Rethreaded are different companies.
Oh yeah.
So tell us more about each of them.
So Sari Bari, I was part of co-founding with Sarah Lance. And I was there for the first 3 years of the business. And then Sarah stayed and continued on, and she's the one that grew it up to to be able to employ 120 women. So they're all based in India, and Rethreaded is based in Jacksonville, Florida. So when I came back from the States, met a survivor of human trafficking here, and I was like, I know what to do. If you economically empower a woman and give her access to a new community, she will change her life. So I started Rethreaded here. So Rethreaded here actually buys blankets from Sari Bari in India and resells them here. So it was like a full circle when I started Rethreaded in the United States. And Rethreaded works directly employs women here in the States, in Jacksonville, Florida.
So what needs to be done to curtail human trafficking?
Well, no one really the conversation is starting to be talked about what I believe, that I believe that human trafficking is a business, and it's based on supply and demand, that the commercial sex trade industry makes $99 billion a year globally. That's $267 million a day. So what we what we believe is that if there is, it's a basic business principle, if there's no supply, then there won't be any demand. So we believe in addressing the demand side. So we would like to see, what my philosophy is it's called the Nordic model, where the sex buyer is held accountable, and actually that part is criminalized. The selling of sex is decriminalized, and usually it's women, it's also boys and also men that sell. When they're arrested, they're actually given access to services and access to start a new life. So therefore, the traffickers have no one to sell to. And that's really the only thing that's shown to decrease human trafficking, is addressing the supply side. Because most of the traffickers also come from severely trauma-ridden backgrounds, and it's an economic driver for them. So again, if you cut it off, then I think we can see some real change.
You know, I think every direct decision that you make kind of takes you one direction or another. Can you think back to which decision most influenced where you are today?
I remember I remember specifically, I had gotten accepted to grad school to go to counseling because I wanted to help women, and all I knew was that I wanted to make a safe place for women. And I was working in campus ministry at the time when we got a newsletter in the mail that they had just started work in Kolkata, India with women in the red light area. And I was like, that sounds amazing. It sounds something I would like to do. So I ended up going to India for 4 months and just had my world changed. And I deferred school for a year, but I remember getting back to the States, and the school was like, are you ready? It's time to start school. And I was like, I'm not going. I'm going to go back to India. And I went back for 5 years. And that was a significant detour in my life.
Tell me a story of one of the women that you have helped that really made a big impact on you.
So probably one of the biggest impacts is not even necessarily a success story. So Rethreaded had been in business maybe a year and a half. So we were still really new, figuring a lot of stuff out. But at that point, we knew that you can't hire a woman directly out of trauma. She just cannot function. She's in severe complex trauma. Majority of our women come from addiction, and they're just healing. They have to get to a point where they're stable to come work at Rethreaded. But there was this one woman, and she had only been out for a month. But man, I met her and I was like, I so deeply believe in you. I so deeply believe in you, and I want you to be here. And she came and she lasted about a month. But man, at that time we were making kids' clothes. We were making these little skirts out of upcycled t-shirts. And she would literally sit in the corner and sew and just cry and just cry. And she would just sew, and she's like, she was so in trauma and so thankful to be here. And she wanted to be here so bad. And she would sit there and cry. And she would tell me one day, she's like, Kristin, I can't believe that I am going to sew this skirt for a little girl who might never have to go through what I go through. And like, she lasted about a month and she went back in, but we still keep in contact. That was 9 years ago, and we still keep in contact on Facebook. And she actually tried to come back again. She's in Orlando now, but she tried to come back again, and we got her a bus ticket here. And she didn't stay again, but she's still there, and I still think of her a lot because so she was a clear picture to me of what trauma, addiction, shame does to a person, that she wants out. But it's like she's so trapped by that she can't find her way out right now. So I continue to pray for her.
So the reason people go back is, I mean, a variety of reasons, I'm sure,
Yeah.
but one reason is probably money. One reason is just the emotional familiarity with it, or feeling that they don't deserve it, the good part, or what do you think it is?
It's all of the above. So this was a study in our city. This was 20 years ago. And they did a study where women who are arrested for prostitution were given access to drug counseling, career counseling, housing assistance, like everything they needed to start their life. And out of all the women arrested, only 17% went back.
That's
I know,
pretty good.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And all the stats show that approximately 90% of women want to leave and they don't know how. Yeah, so the barriers that a woman faces are usually addiction is part of the story. Somehow, addiction is part of the story. There's severe complex trauma. So a majority of women, sometimes trauma is what makes them vulnerable to trafficking. Like 75% of women in the commercial sex trade industry have been victims of sexual abuse. And then once you're in it, a lot of our women were trafficked when they're 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, you know, when we're getting work experience. So if they do get out on the other side, yeah, they have no job history, criminal background, usually have no license by that time, usually totally shamed by people. So there is just this litany of barriers for them to overcome. And it is, I think trauma is the biggest thing, because it's the same as domestic abuse survivors, how there's the pattern where they end up going back to their abuser because it's what they know, it's comfortable, and there's not a clear path forward. So we see the same thing, the effect of trauma on our women.
This is probably a dumb question, but what is the difference between sex trafficking and prostitution?
That's a great question, and we probably at Rethreaded, we probably have a different answer. So human trafficking is the use of force, fraud, or coercion to perform a sex act for profit. So there is a lot of gray. Like our women who are survivors would say there's no such thing as prostitution. There's only trafficking. That once you put money into the equation, that's coercion and that's trafficking. Because a lot of people think human trafficking is like abduction, but only 5% of all human trafficking cases are abduction. The other 95% is someone has a vulnerability and someone uses force, fraud, or coercion to exploit them, to make money off of them. So like one of our women, she just told her story. She was 26. She had been in addiction. Her family kicked her out, and then she met a guy, and the guy's like, I'll take care of you. I'll be your safe place. And that is so many of our women's stories. Something makes them vulnerable, and then a guy comes along and romances, trust me, I'll be there for you. And then he'll just be like, I need you to do this one time. And they'll do it one time. And then when she refuses, that's when violence comes in. So, yeah, so it depends on your perspective. I am along with the lines of our women. The line between prostitution and human trafficking is very, very gray. Way more gray than people will ever imagine.
And there must be a big problem with self-esteem, because how could you not have a problem in a sense?
Yeah, one of our women told me one time, she was out, the area of town where a lot of exploitation happens is called Phillips Highway, but she was out there for 10 years. She had some mental health disorder, but she said, and she was suicidal at the end of her time on the street. And she goes, I got to this point where I believe this is what I deserved. This is what I was worth. And it would always be like this. Yeah, all of our women will say that one thing. I thought it would be like this forever. I did not know there could be anything different.
So how do you find the people that you want to help with employment?
So a woman has to be stable enough to at least come to work and be enough out of her trauma where she can find her way to work on time. So usually we work with different rehab facilities in the city. We find that if a woman needs to be clean and sober and stable for about 6 months before she's ready to start with us. So, but our biggest referral, honestly, is that our survivors get strong and get healed, and they go back and bring in their friends who they knew when they were in the life. And that's our biggest referral source. It's
Oh,
amazing.
interesting.
Yeah.
I find that fascinating
Yeah.
because a success story is really what they are, and they're going back and trying to help the people that they know they might be able to help to get back out again.
Yeah. And we talk about it all the time. We're paving the way for other women. So like what our survivors are doing today is paving the way for the woman who's going to come. Actually, we're hiring 8 women August 6th. So we're paving the way for those 8 women to have a new life.
And do you find people through shelters as well?
Sometimes it depends on their situation. A lot of times shelters are emergency. So a lot of times women are still in deep, deep trauma. So they need to go through some kind of counseling program, addiction program before they're ready to come here. So like, for example, when that woman came here after a month, every time our door opened to our office, it triggered her trauma. Like it triggered her so much that she was so afraid her trafficker was going to walk back in the door. I mean, it was just a really hard for her after a month. It was still too much. It was still too much. She wasn't ready yet. Mm-hmm.
So knowing that trafficking in its purest form over here
Mm-hmm.
involves force, and yet there's still force over here, even in prostitution. Is a John the same? That's the person that that's the buyer,
It's the
right?
buyer, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's the buyer.
So is there the person who is in charge of the woman
Mm-hmm.
and in prostitution? What is that called?
I mean, we call it trafficker. And if you're not in this line of work, it's usually called the pimp. But we try
Okay.
to call them what he really is, which is a trafficker.
Well, that was really my question. What's
Mm-hmm.
the difference between a pimp and a trafficker?
It's just the language. It's
Okay.
just the language. We try not to. The pimp comes with a lot of. It's like we don't use the word prostitute either. We say a woman who's prostituted just because that word carries a lot of weight. So does pimp. We try to use trafficker because that's what they're doing.
So what is the profile? Are you finding that it's age-wise? Are you finding people with children or not? What are some of the profiles that you're seeing?
So we work with women who sometimes fall through the cracks. So for example, one of our women, we had a chance to talk to the state attorney's office. We were educating them about signs of human trafficking. And she brought in a picture of herself when she was 19 years old. And then she brought in her mugshot of herself a year later. So when she was 19, she had no criminal background, no addiction, nothing. She was clean, good, was working, like had a steady job. And then she had a bad check or something. So she held her pictures up in front of the state attorney's office and said, "This is what happened to me in 1 year, and no one asked me what happened. They just treated me like a criminal." And she went on to be in the life for like 10 years and was arrested like 35 times. So like a lot of our women come out of, they were usually trafficked much younger, age 16 to like mid 20s. And then they get in the life and they get in that cycle and they usually can't find their way out. We see a lot of women being able to find their way out more in their 30s after years and years and years of complex trauma. But our youngest woman was 19 and the oldest woman we had was in her 50s. So it just depends on, each story.
Each story.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll bet you hear so many stories, it would be hard not to just want to cry all the time.
Well, that's the cool thing about Rethreaded, though, is that so when I was in India, I spent 4 days a week in the red light district with the girls and women. And I would just sit and listen to stories. And then I spent 1 day at the business. Like I said, Sarah was the one that really built it up. So I would sit and listen to stories all day long. And literally, the only thing that saved me was that I could go to Sari Bari and have hope and sit with women who were reclaiming their life. And now that I'm in the States and I'm at Rethreaded, we work with women who have made it on the other side now and they want to come here because they want a new life. They want to change their life and they're ready to do the work. So it's actually hopeful to be on this side. Some of the ladies, some of them I never know the details of their story because we're so future focused and just calling life into each other. And so we call it tangible hope. That's why business is so cool. That's why purchasing, sorry, I have a journal sitting here, purchasing a journal right here is you're purchasing the tangible hope of a woman pouring out her life to reclaim it. So that's why it's cool to work here.
It sounds like it's very cool to work there because you're just accomplishing something that not very many people want to tackle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But the coolest thing is that I call our women hidden treasures. Like the world almost misses out on them because you just get lost in the system, lost. But at Rethreaded, we see potential. So we get to see what's inside and what's underneath all the trauma. Because we talk about the butterfly analogy a lot. Like scientists don't really understand it, but everything the caterpillar needs to become the butterfly is already inside the caterpillar. So I think that's what Rethreaded does, is we just give space for women to uncover and heal and release what's already inside them.
I don't know whether you have ever crossed paths with either Jillian Ryan or Marcia Bloom. Both of those people work in the area, but Jillian is interesting because she has an educational program as well. And then it's the products of the business that fund a lot of what she's doing for the sex trafficked women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's almost good if you can listen to each other's podcasts and maybe have a connection between the three of you.
What's the name of their organization?
I have to go back and look to remember exactly what the name of her company is, but I can look that up and send it to you.
I would love to connect with them.
And Marcia is in Omaha, and she, I think, still pretty much works with the women as well. And so it might be a good connection for you.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
What have you found that is different during COVID?
Well, we've had a very interesting COVID journey. And the cool thing about Rethreaded is that we are a production company, and about 2 weeks into COVID, when the world was running out of masks, we got a call from a hospital and said, can you make us masks? So we made 3,000 medical masks, and then we've made about 24,000 cotton masks for a really large company called Adecco, for Pace Center for Girls. I mean, we've been able to give back to the community, and we've made 24,000 masks, which has allowed us to keep all our survivors employed. We cut no one's hours. Everyone was able to remain in a stable work environment. And for the first 3 months it was quite amazing. And now that the mask sales have slowed down, we're trying to figure out how we're going to do this. We do a lot of events to sell, so we'll figure it out though. But we're still on track. We're still going to hire 8 women in August. And what is just now, how long have we been in this? 4 months now? 4 months, 5 months? Feels like forever. In COVID. Are we 5 months into COVID?
Well, if you count February,
March.
probably
Okay.
can. February, March, April,
March.
May,
Okay.
June, good 5.
5. So they're just now starting to come out with numbers of what's going on in human trafficking right now, because this is unprecedented. Like our ladies, we were trying to decide, are we going to hire women in August or are we going to hire women in January? And one of our survivors spoke up and she goes, the worst time when I was in life is during hurricanes when the city would shut down, because her trafficker would get so agitated, weren't making any money, he would turn violent. And she goes, we have to hire those ladies in August. And so now they're starting to come, like calls to the hotline are 40% up. Like there's all these stats about now coming out about what's going on in human trafficking and how women are out there. They don't have access to emergency. They don't have access to the hotline. The tons of shelters shut down during this time. So like, it's just been, so we're hiring. We're going to hire 8 women and just find a way to make it work. God always helps us out somewhere along the line. So we're going for it.
When those shelters shut down, where do people go? Out on the streets?
Yeah, there's nowhere to go. So usually women stay in their situation because they can't leave. And then the domestic shelter, our domestic shelter is now more back open, but yeah, they were having the same problem. Domestic violence went up
Right.
during this time.
I have heard that that people that are shut in, in one location together and with someone that is abusive anyway, it just is getting worse.
Yeah.
What do you do for self-care for yourself?
I am learning about that. I now go to a mindfulness coach. So I'm practicing mindfulness. I'm trying to slow down. My favorite thing to do in the world is swim in the ocean. I live really close to the ocean here, so at least 2 mornings a week we do sunrise swims, and it's my favorite thing. That's really, honestly, anything gonna be going on. If I can go to the ocean and I can get a swim in, and then after the swim I'll just lay in the ocean and breathe, and I was like, it's gonna be okay. So yeah, those are 2 things right now.
What do you think is the biggest problem for society now and in the future?
I think that as I look at, the Black Lives Matter movement, human trafficking, all this, poverty, I think the underlying issue that we're just now starting to see, so this is after me being in this industry for like 18 years now, is that there is this underlying issue of trauma and its effect on your brain, the effect on your ability to think rationally, on your ability to be in healthy relationships. And if we don't address trauma, then no one heals and it won't get better. So I think that, like, I was like, now I have a joke. I was like, if I ever run for office, my platform's going to be a trauma-informed city, where the heart of the city is to bring restoration and healing. So we would redo the way we do criminal justice. We would encourage anyways, I'm the visionary. But I do believe unresolved trauma is one of the biggest issues in our country.
Thinking about what you've been through in the 18 years and really going through COVID now, what have you learned is the most important thing in your life?
I feel like I'm having a mini healing session at 43. And COVID has been really good. It has been really good for me because I'm so driven and I'm so passionate about what we do. Like when it's not COVID, I was like working all day long 4 nights a week. I was out in the community. But during COVID, like for 3 months, all I did was all I did was make masks. Like we sat side by side, all of us, and we made masks that helped people, and we laughed and we bonded and we cried. And I was like, gosh, I so easily forget, like, this is it. This is all what it's about. It's about the person who's next to me. And am I loving them, and am I letting them love me? And are we experiencing life together? So that's what I'm trying. This COVID thing has really been good to slow me down and realize, oh, it's okay to slow down. Oh, it's good.
But not stop you.
But not stop us now. And maybe what I feel like I want to learn, am learning, is that the motivation becomes different. Like it can become from a place of abundance instead of a place of lack.
Where would you like to be in 5 years? What would you like to be doing? What do you dream of?
Well, I dream of, so right now at Rethreaded, I'm the CEO and I'm the Director of Business Development. So just career-wise, I would like Rethreaded to be in a place where I just get to be CEO. And see what that feels like. I don't know if small businesses ever get that, but that would be really cool.
Probably not.
And then hopefully we're able to be expanding Rethreaded to other cities by then. And we're helping empower more women across the country, and that our model is strong enough. No one's figured out the employment piece, so Rethreaded's figuring something out right now. And then I hope to just become, personally, I hope that I'm a more loving, kind, gentle, wise person who's still driven and passionate.
Well, it sounds like somebody that I would like to know. That's for sure. What advice do you have for the younger generation?
Ooh, I guess if I was talking to them, I was like, you are capable of more than you think you are. But man, when you're young, use that time to like learn, and everything that you learn when you're younger, you will use just weird stuff that you learn when you're young, you're going to use when you're older. So if you could keep learning and like be hungry for that and just build into yourself, nothing's in vain. Like nothing's in vain, and you'll find your way. It'll be different, and it'll be different than you think it is, and that's okay.
And maybe that's good advice for some of those 16 to 20-year-olds that you were talking about that end up in a bad place.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if they took that advice that you just gave, maybe it'd be different.
Maybe. Mm-hmm.
Anything else you'd like to tell people?
What you do matters. So go out and do it. So we always use this analogy at Rethreaded that because we're a business, we're like, how you spend your money matters. And like, you just buy your coffee at Rethreaded and you make an impact in the world. Like, it doesn't have to be all these complex things. Like, everything you does matter, and you can affect the world around you by doing simple things and huge impacts.
And you are making a huge impact. And thank you so much for what you do, because it's not easy, but you do it. And I thank you.
Thank you.